Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Willa Vincitor, and I'm class of 92. We are going to get started because we have a lot to share with you today, and we don't want to miss a beat. So I would like to begin by inviting my colleague at Vassar, Barton Thurber, who is the Anne Hendricks Bass director of the Francis Lehman Loeb Art Center and also a lecturer in art. Bart is going to speak with us a little bit and share some information. So Bart, please.
Thanks very much, Willa. It's really a pleasure to be with all of you today. And at some point, I've only been here now. This is my second reunion. Well, actually, there was no reunion last year. I've only been here since August of 2019 and have yet to experience reunions in person. So very much looking forward to that opportunity. But it's really a pleasure to welcome all of you today on behalf of the Francis Lehman Loeb Art Center. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen immediately because it's far more important for you to see the work of Mira Lehr, who generously just donated a work of art to us that just recently arrived. So I'm going to start my screen here. And this is really extraordinary, and you're going to be learning so much exciting aspects of her work and approach. And this is entitled Silent Cove, 2009 to 2018. As you can see, burned and dyed Japanese paper, hand drawing, woodblock, ink on paper, and I have a feeling there are about a half dozen other media in there that she actually hasn't even revealed to us. This is a gift in honor specifically of her 65th reunion this year. What you can't see from the screen is this is 37 inches by 37 inches. So this is 3 feet by 3 feet. It's enormous. It has a lot of impact and power, and it resonates with so many other aspects of our collection. So we're delighted to include this. It's now the second work of Mira's that has been added to the collection. And I just want to show you one more slide because the context of this gift, it makes so much sense for us, not only because of her, this is her alma mater, but the work that we do in promoting women artists and have done really since the very beginning, from Laura Brigham's portrait from 1877, 1878 of Maria Mitchell, one of the first 9 faculty members here at Vassar, and one of 2 female faculty members who taught astronomy and was world renowned. But that was the first commission here at Vassar, was of Maria Mitchell in that 1877-78 period of time. And I'm showing here our current exhibition, which were you to be here on the premises, you'd be able to visit in person. We are open now 6 days a week to all visitors, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for any of you who are nearby. And this exhibition at the end, Willow might be able to share with you, or you can go to our website. We've done a 3D virtual tour of this exhibition, so you can navigate through all of it. But the thing that I really wanted to highlight in this context is that out of 39 works, 9 of them were gifts from the artist or the artist estate. And that goes to, if you can see my cursor, the Florine Stettheimer from 1927, the Titina Mazzelli, which is a magnificent work. There was an exhibition that some of you may recall from 1955 that Sylvia May Stern, your classmate, Kleeman was her married name, wrote about in the MISC just at that time and still can be referenced. And then this wonderful Sylvia Slay from 1967. So again, out of 39 objects, 9 of them have been donated by the artists themselves or by their estates, family members. And the other person that I want to mention in this context before I need to unfortunately leave you is mentioning Betsy Mudge Wilson, also class of 1956, who I understand passed away soon after graduation. But there's a memorial fund that was set up in her honor that has been around for more than 50 years now. And we are using that extensively to continue to build on the strengths that we have in the collection, and specifically women artists. So with that, I just wanted to emphasize that Mira's wonderful work of art finds a welcoming home and a context that we're looking forward to promoting in the near future. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to the rest of the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bart. We really appreciate your willingness to join us today. I want to let everyone know we're going to show a very short video, after which Myra's friend and classmate, who you all know, Jean Rejeunet, is going to come back and do an interview. So we're going to watch a little video here.
The beauty is very important to me, but I have to take the bloom off the rose. I'm Mira Lehr. I'm an artist. All of my work has burning of some kind in it, and I think it does reflect both sides of creation and destruction, and that's what nature is all about. It's always related to the environment. I always drew when I was a little kid. I never really knew I would be a professional artist. As I grew older, I decided I was going to study art history in college. I was so lucky because at the time I graduated, the abstract expressionists were holding forth in New York, and it was a major movement. So I was right in the middle of this really wonderful scene. So from then on, I did art, and I was not really into the environment as much in the beginning. I just did nature, a lot of nature studies. But eventually I heard of Buckminster Fuller, a man who was very much about the planet, and I saw an opportunity to work with him in 1969. I went to New York and I worked with him on something called the World Game. And that was about how to make the world work in the most efficient way and doing more with less. So from then on, I was hooked. I'm feeling two urgencies. One, I'm getting older. That's an urgency. You know, how many years do I have left? And the other urgency is how many years does the planet have left? So we've converged. Every day I get up raring to go. In the Orlando exhibit, it was called High Water Mark because that's where we're at, and that's where they felt my career was at. So that show had very, very large sculptures of mangroves, and you could walk through the mangroves and feel you were encased in the root system. There's something about being enclosed in the space that makes the viewer very much more attentive to what's happening. And so I watched people walking through the mangroves, and they were all moved by it. So that's really the first time I've done that kind of large-scale sculpture. I love doing it. The smaller I get and the older I get, the bigger the work becomes, it seems to me. And so now I'm back in the studio, and I'm turning to something I'm calling planetary visions, because I'm doing images of earth masses. I've also added writing, which some of it is from Bucky Fuller about the planet. Some of it is just poetry about nature. I've always felt abstraction is the highest form, even though I like representation, but to me abstraction gets the essence of everything. And you can take it and go on with it. And it's more spiritual to me. I think like Cézanne, at the end of his life, his paintings became kind of dissolved in light, like light entities. At the end of Rembrandt's life also, his work became less literal and more also dissolved in light. So light is very important. And that to me is the height of it. If you have a light entity in your work, I think it's profound and meaningful. The light on the big sculpture, yeah, those are special lights that grow corals in the laboratory. And the sculpture is a shape of a wave, and it's mesmerizing. You know, if the world pulls apart and people are concerned just with their little everyday existence, I don't see a great future. But I'm hoping there's still time. The clock is definitely ticking. And I'm not a politician and I'm not a scientist. The way I can express it is through my art. And that's what I'm trying to do, along with having a wonderful experience making it.
Myra, hi, it's Jean. That was fascinating. It was so beautiful. I wanted it to go on and never stop. Yeah, like I see your work happening that way. But anyway, we go back a long time. I remember the day that you came, that we both came to Vassar in the fall of 1952. And you moved in right next door to me. So we were always in close proximity. And I remember that you arrived with a couple of things that were different than anybody else. You arrived with a television set and a French poodle. And Vassar wouldn't let you keep them.
Oh.
But
I didn't realize that that was certainly not the way to go to college.
Yeah, they had to go back to Miami Beach. But anyway, you became an art history major, and you were also into studio art with Mr. Rubenstein. Was that right, Mr. Rubenstein?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we knew you were always interested in art, but we had no idea that you would develop into what you have. It's amazing. So what were the influences that you felt at Vassar from your art history major and studio art? Did you start feeling that that was taking you somewhere?
Well, you really could not major in studio art then. It was not considered academic enough, but I took as many credits as I could. And there was joyous time in the studios. People left you alone. You could go in there and work from a model. And it was pretty much, you were on your own. Art history was quite different. That was one of the star majors, I think, at Vassar. Art 105, remember Art 105? Everyone took it.
Yeah.
Loads and loads of art slides to memorize, learning about all the various periods in history. And it gave you a wonderful foundation for art, either as a historian or as an artist. So I love those years. Vassar had Agnes Ringe Claflin had gotten all these wonderful art historians from Germany after the Second World War. And she was smart enough to bring them to Vassar. So there was Wolfgang Lotz and Adolf Katzenellenbogen, and we had lectures by Panofsky, and Krautheimer would come. So it was an unbelievable time to study art history. And during that time, as was shown in the video, the art movement had moved away from Paris into New York, and it was a heyday of abstract expressionism. So there they were, right in New York City. There I was at Vassar. I took many trips to New York City, met many of these abstract expressionists, and some of them became lifelong friends.
Well, you also, when you graduated, you first went to Fort Bragg with your husband,
Well,
and then went to New York again, where you studied at the New York Studio School. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, I was there a lot. It was just the most wonderful time to be in New York then. And Fort Bragg, of course, my husband, I got married right after I graduated, in fact, the day after, which was not uncommon in those days because women either went to secretarial school or got married. It was just not a time for great careers. So I went to Fort Bragg because my husband was in the Army and he was stationed there. And it was an unfortunate place to be. It was mostly red mud all around and not very much culture. So, it was just something you had to get through. But after that, life began for me when we moved to Boston. I went to the Boston Museum School and then to New York City, where he was interning at Columbia Presbyterian. So those were magical years.
And you had a studio of your own in Carnegie Hall in New York.
Yes, I had the use of a studio.
Yeah.
And they were hard to come by. So having this, I had a teacher who had a studio there, and he let me share it with him.
Hmm.
So that's how that came about.
And then you went back to Miami and you founded one of the country's first women's co-ops painting.
Yeah. Well, Miami wasn't exactly a cultural place either then. It was a desert kind of, and full of tourists, hotels, and that kind of life. So when I came back, I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do here? Having just left New York. So I founded a women's co-op gallery because there were many women at that time, the same place I was in, where they had moved there. And it was a time of women not being recognized in the art world. If you were married and you had children, and if you lived in a place like Miami Beach, you were considered a dilettante. And there was no way you could change anyone's mind. So this little co-op gallery I founded took care of all of these displaced women. And we had our own shows. We brought other women artists down to show. It lasted for about 30 years. And it was a miraculous way to get art to us that we couldn't ordinarily be part of anymore. And all those people I met in New York wanted to come down to Miami in the wintertime to get warm. So we had Bucky Fuller came down and lots of wonderful, wonderful artists. I think Motherwell came.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
it made a wonderful center.
Are you still in touch with any of those women?
Yes, I am. Well, many of them have died, Lee Krasner and Joan Mitchell. So there aren't many left from that time, unfortunately.
Well, we have a number of your images to show. This is, the first one is the view from Kathmandu you can see Mount Everest. And you had something to say about that one time when I guess it was in the news that the atmosphere had cleared and you could actually see something there from
Right.
Kathmandu.
Well, what happened is during the pandemic, the fossil fuels were not being used as much. There was not that much travel and no airplanes, less traffic. And it showed us that if you stop the use of fossil fuels, you stop all these bad things pouring into the atmosphere and pollution abates. You can see all around much more clearly. And it's a sign that we can really control our environment if we stop using fossil fuels. In fact, I read somewhere that we should stop it completely by 2050, or we're going to have irreversible damage to the planet. So in this paint, at the base of painting, you can see ignited gunpowder and then an ignited fuse to speak of the danger, portray the danger that exists. And then as you reach the top, you can see that we mentioned, you can see for the first time, you could see from Kathmandu, the peaks of Mount Everest, which were always covered before because of the fossil fuel. And this time it was clear that what we were seeing was how the world would be if fossil fuels would stop. And so that's one of my missions.
And then the next one is Pandora's Blossom.
Yeah, well, here you see again the dangerous possibility of destruction by the burned and ignited gunpowder at the bottom of the painting. And then there are these clear, beautiful shapes with messages on them about ways we can improve the environment. And through that are the lines signifying the many different roads that can be taken. And then at the top of the panels are cut and burned and dyed Japanese paper, which is, they're beautiful and it's like pieces there. So it's a, when you open Pandora's box, you really can't anticipate what troubles will come pouring out. But this is a painting of hope, that from all of that, things will get better and we will have some kind of better environment to look forward to.
And then you have ancient secret maps.
Well, a lot of my work, it's called imaginary planetary visions. A lot of them are not actual places, but imaginary places. So I have a shape that's burned around the edges. It's just an imaginary place on the earth, and around it, it's surrounded by burned and ignited gunpowder. So it's the idea of danger always lurking around what we have to look for, not to incur any more damage than we already have to our planet. And so on this map are lines of rivers I've made with thread, map pins pointing out various natural images on this map. And then the circular patterns imply something that might have been buried in ancient discoveries. So it's really about mystery, and it's about the future and having to protect our planet and protect the environment that's very threatening now.
And then the path to Jericho.
Yeah, once again, I start with the burned ignited gunpowder. The darkest, I have two varieties here. I have a yellow gunpowder and a black gunpowder. The darkest is the black at the bottom that's ignited. When it's ignited, it's amazing. It just goes up in flames and then it subsides and you're left with these beautiful marks. The next level is the yellow gunpowder, which could be the atmosphere. The darker one might be the earth, then the atmosphere. And then at the top are all these beautiful shapes that I burn and dye from Japanese paper, kind of like peaceful existence and environmental health. So that's what these three very large and very monumental, these three panels signify.
And then is the flying horse next?
Let's see. Yeah, that I just came back. I was invited to be artist in residence at Flying Horse Editions in Orlando, Florida. It's a wonderful print shop. And they have a master printer there who helped me learn about printmaking. So I just created some lithographs and some watercolor monotypes. This is one of the monotypes. I love this printmaking so much that I'm starting to do that here in my studio in Miami. And it's going to be a new adventure for me because I've never done printmaking before. So there I created some lithographs and these monotypes, and all having to do with the environment. It's so painterly and it's so beautiful because at the end of the process, you're never quite sure what's going to come out on the press after you've pulled it through the press. And so everyone is a bit of a mystery and a surprise. So that's my new love at the moment.
Does it change every time you print, or is it like
well, these are unique. These are single prints. I did make a lithograph that they're going to make an edition of, and that will be the same thing over and over. But the unique prints give you a chance to just be very free and very painterly. And if you make a mistake, you just wipe it off with water. I like to be able to change in my work. I don't like to have to use something that once you put it down, you can't do anything else to it, which is actually what happens with gunpowder and fuses. Once they're down, that's it. You can't remove it. But it does leave a beautiful mark. So that's the risk.
We have another slide here. Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, I love this one.
Yeah. This is very exciting. I was asked to create a ceiling for the first, it's a very historic building. It was the first synagogue in Miami, I think. It's Miami Beach, this one. But it was the first one. And so they asked if I would have this possibility, if I could take this possibility and create a ceiling for them. And they gave me a certain amount of time. And I said, sure, I'd love to. It was a great opportunity. It turned out I really had to rush to get it done within that time. It's 183 sculptures suspended from the ceiling, and they are made of Japanese paper that I've dyed and burned. Some have imagery, some have writing, and then I've cast them in resin. And so as they hang from the ceiling, they fill the room with light because they reflect all of the light coming in from the stained glass windows. And it's the first time I've ever done anything like that. And it was open for Art Basel. So there were great crowds of people who came to see it. And eventually it was bought by a New York collector who then donated it to this museum. And it's very, very beautiful and impressive when you go in there. And so it creates a very spiritual space, and you feel history and the past when you walk in there. And I'm so happy it's open and it's permanent, and it's a beautiful legacy to leave.
Oh, and here we are at Noweki.
Noeki, yeah.
Yeah, Noweki.
This is a fairly new work that was just purchased by the Boca Raton Museum of Art in Boca Raton. And it's an idea of New York City. It's an anagram, Norweki, and it shows these imaginary shapes of how I picture New York, with the rising sea around it, with the climate change happening, and with the danger of future environmental problems that's signified by the burning fuses that cut across the terrain. So I hope, that I bring some kind of message to people who are looking at it about how we have to maintain a good environment for our planet to be in existence, because we're facing such enormous dangers from the climate change, the rising seas, the pollution. And my main worry is about fossil fuels. So I'm hoping that I'll help bring some kind of vision to people and make them want to protect our endangered environment. That's really what my work is about.
You said at one time that you had gotten your inspiration about the environment because of the waters outside of your home. You live on the water in Miami Beach.
Right.
And you saw it change over the years.
Yes, it used to be pristine and beautiful. It's now full of very peculiar looking fish. They have everything but a third eye. They've got scales that are funny looking. They have sores on them. We get influx of jellyfish now because of the warming waters. People throw trash in there. It's just a whole different scene, and it makes me very, very sad. So I hope that somehow this will change. And as we progress in our lives, we'll see more and more attention to correcting the problems that beset us.
Myra, with apologies for the interruption, would you like us to show the brief video about that final painting before we keep going with questions?
Sure, please.
And that's in the permanent collection of the Boca Raton Museum.
Yes, I'm going there tomorrow night to see it. So
Oh, you haven't seen it
I
yet?
haven't seen it installed. It's, I understand it's in a beautiful location.
Hmm. Well, are there any other exhibits that you'd like to talk about that, museums, collections, galleries that you've been in that you'd like to mention?
Well, the past few years, I've been in many. I've had a few museum shows. Manila Museum in Orlando, Florida, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Miami, and I've had solo shows, galleries. But a very exciting thing that's happening for me is that Skira, remember Skira Books?
Mm-hmm. And how?
They're publishing a new book about me, a whole monograph, I think 420 pages, that will be out in the fall. And then they're going to have book signing parties down here during Art Basel. So anyone who's around, come on down, come see Art Basel and come see the Skira. We'll have a party and you're all invited.
Wonderful. Yeah, Skira does beautiful books. I'm sure a lot of people have seen them and maybe made note of the name, but they are one of the leading art books publishers in the world.
Right. They're based in Milan now. So we're all going to go to Milan.
Yeah. Yeah, they started out in Switzerland and they moved to Paris and now they're in Milan. Yeah.
We're all going.
Good. And the party too.
Having a party.
Yeah. And tell us about the Mira Lehr Foundation.
Well, I'm going to establish a foundation, probably for women artists who are inspired to help the planet. And I'd like them to protect the environment. So I'd like to award people who are into that awards, monetary awards, so they can continue the work I think is so important. And of course, my paintings will be in it and it'll be a resource that I'm looking forward to creating.
And how do you see your future as an artist? What's next?
Well, first of all, the printmaking I'm doing now is very inspiring. So I'm very much into that. And then I'm into making the foundation happen and seeing the book being published. And I just have so much that I see in the future that I want to do. I can't even have time to go out to lunch. I'm very, very excited about the new work. And I'm really looking forward to as many years as I have left to keep working in the studio and producing more and more and helping planet Earth recover.
Wonderful. Mary Kay is here.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be here with you all and to hear so much more about Mira's work than I ever knew before. This has been fascinating, and I see that a lot of our participants agree. Some of the comments in the chat are stunning images. So glad to learn more about your work. It's gorgeous. So for Mira, someone says, thank you. Your work is absolutely beautiful and eye-opening. The question is, how did you first get the idea to use burned and ignited gunpowder in your work? Where did that idea come from?
Do you remember an artist named Saigo Guang? I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his last name right. He had a show at the Guggenheim some years ago. Do you remember, Mary Kay?
I do. It's very large scale,
Very.
really big work. I think I saw a show at Mass MoCA as well. Same artist, yeah.
Well, I happened to see that show and I thought, wow, the gunpowder leaves such a beautiful imagery on the paper, on the canvas, on the wall. And I thought, well, I have an assistant who loves guns and gunpowder, so I'd like to try that. So when I went back to Miami, we went up to the gun place and we bought lots of gunpowder and fuses and started to experiment. And I loved the idea of showing destruction along with the beauty of the painting, because it's the other side of creation, destruction. And I thought that would make a big impact on the, take the bloom off the rose, so to speak. So you would see the ominous presence we have looming around the earth with the environmental problems and still have a beautiful residue left on the work as you burn this. And it's very exciting to burn as well because it flashes up. You have smoke all over the place. And I have to do it outside, of course, because otherwise my house would be full of smoke. So I do it outside and people think I'm nuts because they see this billowing smoke rising out of my garden all the time. They're not quite sure what I'm doing, but they know there's something going on here. And the fuses are a little different. They burn very slowly and they leave a trail of thorns as they grow. But that's also very, very interesting on the surface to have that thorny pattern because it's also ominous. So between the beauty of the actual Japanese paper I dye and cut and burn, and then this ignition thing going on, it gives an edge to the work that I like. And I think it's very relevant today because if we go too far, we destroy everything. And if we keep it just level, we'll be okay. So that's how
I like that, that it's both a process, but also a metaphor for like sort of production and destruction being at odds with one another.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, and I appreciate your urgent message, of course, to save the environment and the planet. But I also love that you really enjoy the making of your art, that part is enjoyable to you, and that you're discovering new processes all the time. I was very sort of surprised to hear that you hadn't really engaged in printmaking before because your work really seems to lend itself to that. So I'm glad you've found that and you're heading off into that direction. That sounds really exciting.
Yes, thank you.
And there's a couple more questions. So we have probably a fellow artist who's asking a question. What is your favorite Japanese paper that you like to use in your work?
I use something called Okawara paper. It's you can make it transparent with matte medium or resin or urethane, but it's very, very strong. It takes punishment like you can't imagine. So it doesn't fall apart. And it's Okawara.
Okay. And I'm curious because you mentioned the transparency and the durability. The jewelry that you wear, is this something that you make yourself?
Yes. These are made from burned and dyed Japanese paper with resin poured over it. And then with a dremeled out of the resin, the bed of resin, and polished and put on the chains.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
That's really creative. So a couple more questions. Someone says, I think that you're communicating your message exceptionally well and with such beautiful evocative imagery. How would you propose to reach the individuals who are not likely to go to a museum or featuring your work? How do you get that message out, I guess, is the question.
In my scope. I have no other way to do it. I don't, go on TV or anything, and I'm not a politician. The only way I can reach people is through my work. And those who don't look at art or will have to get it some other way. I wish I could address it, but I wouldn't know any other way to show people how I think except through my work.
Yeah, and it is communicated beautifully that way. So I have a message from Meg Sofer. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name, Meg, correctly, but she says that she saw the Guggenheim show and she loves the transformation and destructive aspect of your technique, and that she'll connect when she's next in Florida.
Wonderful.
It's Meg Sofer, so I'll connect.
Sofer, thank you, Meg. I've known you for many years, but I forgot how to pronounce your last name.
I appreciate when I saw you were presenting here, I looked up your website already and it was really wonderful to see so much of the work and get the idea of your history of, really trying to support women artists, and good luck with the foundation. That's great. A lot of women working today in environmental consciousness.
It's so much better today than it was in the 50s and 60s, where women were really not recognized and were really considered dilettantes. It was very discouraging. And you really had to have it was kind of a character. You have to have something of character that would make you continue in that kind of environment, because it was unresponsive to female artists.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you have seen the book Ninth Street Women, but it's a fabulous book, and I'm sure you probably know some of the players in that book, and it's really about women before and after the 50s, and how things were changed by the war. It's a fantastic read if this is of interest to anybody. So another question for Myra. The new book by Skyra highlights the last 5 years of your career. What will Skyra feature in your new book about this recent phase of your long and wonderful career?
What is the question? What is the
what will be featured in the book?
Oh, well, the book is all about these shows I've had and my new ideas about the environment, and taking off on the printing, and a whole new future. Part of the book is from an older book that was published about me, where it describes my rise to more professional painting and living and having a career. And this one describes all the things, and there are many things that have happened more recently that were needed to be recorded. And that's what this book is about. And it's very, that's the way art is. One thing leads to another, to another, and to another. So you're never quite sure where you're going. But if you love doing it, there's no end in sight. You can always learn more and discover more, and never finished with it, which is what's so wonderful about creative careers.
And Jean wants to know, do you consider that a catalog raisonné? Will it be complete of what you've made so far?
I think it will. I'm not sure it's going to include everything, because it doesn't go back before kind of starts, I guess. Well, in the 1950s, I have some things in from the 50s. It can't go much further back than that. But a catalog that includes everything, maybe that'll happen with the foundation.
Nice. And this is a question I'm curious about as well. What was it like to collaborate with Buckminster Fuller?
Thrilling. It was thrilling. I went to New York for something called the World Game. He accepted 26 participants, and he didn't want politicians, and he didn't want specialists, because he wanted everyone to have a worldview. So we were some artists, musicians, philosophers, scientists, just no politicians. And he was a tiny little man with great big huge eyes behind these very thick lenses. So he looked kind of like outer space, an outer space alien in a way. And he spoke for hours and hours and hours at a time. So I was in this room with these other 26 participants, and we were surrounded by his Dymaxion maps, where all of the resources on the earth could be located. And we moved the resources around, and we came up with a scenario by the end of the project of how to make the world work more efficiently and how to do more with less. So I left that project with great ideas about what was wrong with the earth and what to do to make it better. And it stuck with me forever. And that's what inspired a lot of the environmental work I do.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm sure he would be very pleased to know that you're carrying that flame forward.
Oh.
So here's another question from Betty Ann Corzeny.
Yes.
How can you convey your passion for the environment to art students at Vassar and beyond? It's true. I think many students at Vassar are very engaged and interested in that issue.
I'm sure they are. Yes. I really don't know. My book will be available. I have 2 paintings in the museum. They could give me a show. That would be nice.
Well, we'll definitely, now that I'm learning so much more, and I will definitely pick up that book, and we will add some contextual information to your painting whenever we show it at the Loeb, which is sometimes people actually read the wall text of the art museum interpretation of the art, not always, but maybe we can get you to come and do a talk in the museum when things are back in
Yeah.
circulation again.
It would be great. And, who knows? The future is open, and I'm getting out there. I'm in a lot of collections and museums now, and keeps going that way. It's pretty good.
Oh, you've had a fabulous career so far. And it sounds like, as I like to say to many artists, that I love doing studio visits repeatedly over the years with the same artist. And I always leave saying, well, you're just getting going. Because artists like you just have idea after idea that seem sort of endless. So especially with this new process of printmaking, it'll be wonderful to see how that develops in your work, and as you continue to make more work. And we still have a couple more minutes for other questions. Oh, I have another one that just came in now that says, can you speak about the scale of your work? It's very large. How do you manage the physical nature of making this art, and maybe even moving it around in your studio, things like that?
That's a good question. Well, it's getting more and more difficult, but the smaller I get, the shorter I get, the bigger the work becomes. So it's somehow compensating, I think. I have studio assistants, and they help me. I don't really climb up the ladders so much anymore, but I take the work down from the wall, turn it upside down, lay it on the floor. There are many different ways to create large scale things. And also I usually have a division of the paintings. Like I'll do a triptych, so there'll be 3 manageable panels instead of one giant thing. But I am into doing very large scale work. I don't know, just one of those things that happened to me.
That's so much contemporary art is large scale. So you're on trend there.
Yeah.
So let's see, another question. What advice would you give to young women artists starting out today? And what would you say to your 21-year-old self, if you could say something to yourself back when you got started? That's a great question.
That is a great question. What I would say to 21-year-old women today would be to be careful of wanting too much too soon. Try to follow your inner ideas. Don't get swayed by market talk. It's 2 different things in the art world. One is the career, and one is just the passion of the work. Focus on the passion of the work, and the career may happen, but don't focus on it. It's too much emphasis on selling and doing things that will hurt you if you don't watch out for that. Just don't get swayed by the other part. Be true to yourself.
Yeah, that's
I would have myself when I was 21. I would probably say it's a tough road. Keep yourself from being down. Always know that there's, if you did it once, you can do it again. So go through the bad times knowing that, because there will be bad times.
Thank you. That's fantastic advice. Let's see. Another question is more about your installation work. When you do these huge installations, what happens when the exhibition is over? Where do all the pieces go?
That's a very good question. I am dealing with that right now because I have mangroves made of rope, very large scale structures sitting outside my backyard. I'm waiting for a museum to want them, which is very questionable. And I'm hoping that they'll be installed somewhere someday that can handle large scale. I have, the sculptures do present a problem. I have a warehouse where I store some large things, but it's, the paintings at least can be stacked, but the large scale sculpture is the problem.
Well, and I just want to bring up a comment that when you and Jean were talking about, the art history department back in the 50s and how there really wasn't so much a studio section. You couldn't really major in studio. And I'm actually working on an exhibition of Harry Roseman's work. He has been teaching at Vassar, just recently retired, for over 30 years. And it was in the 80s before he and some other professors who were teaching studio really developed a major in studio. So it took many years after you all graduated to get to that point where it's not only a way that you can major in making art, but it's a fantastic program. And there are, you know, when I have people asking me advice, should I send my kid to RISD or to Vassar? I always say Vassar because you're going to get both, right? You're going to get that well-rounded liberal arts education. You can take that Art 105, 106 class, but you can also, you know, really focus in on becoming an artist. And there are many of you out there that have graduated from Vassar. One painting that we just installed, if you were all on campus today, you would be able to see it at the very end of the hallway when you first enter the lobe. It's a very large scale painting by Nancy Graves, who graduated in 1961. So
Majored in English when she was there.
What's that?
She majored in English.
That's right. She wasn't even an art major. She majored in English and then later went to Yale for her MFA. But, you know, Vassar produces a lot of wonderful artists, and a lot of them are women.
Yeah,
We're proud of.
And the best thing is that you do learn to select what's good. From Vassar, I became very, very critical of things that came my way, where I might have fallen for it before Vassar, but not after Vassar. I am very careful about what things enter my life and what sources I go to. And Vassar made me aware of that. It was a wonderful experience, and I wouldn't have traded it for art school.
Nice. That's a great legacy. So we're almost out of time. It's just 5 minutes before we're meant to end. So I want to just make sure that everyone's had a chance to make comments and ask questions while we still have Myra here for another couple of minutes. And if you're not comfortable with the chat, you can unmute yourself and just speak up. Myra, do you have any other last comments that you'd like to share with your audience?
Well, I think keep posted. I'm always, I add things to my website, and I'm always into new ideas and materials, and just try and protect planet Earth. We are all in it, and it's our only place, and try to see that the fossil fuels get done away with. We have other means of providing energy, and that should be prohibited very soon.
Yes, thank you. And Willa just added your website into the chat again. It's miralehr.com. So if anyone would like to keep up to date with Myra's work, that's a good place to do it. And you're getting tons of thank yous and fascinating and illuminating work coming through the chat. Everyone says it's really wonderful. Lots and lots of thank yous. And I agree. I've really enjoyed this myself.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Myra. And thank you to Willa, who's done such a wonderful job, and to Jean. I loved hearing the conversation. And of course, to all the participants. It's nice to be here.
Thanks so much to you as well, Mary Kay, and to all of the audience members. Without further ado, have a wonderful rest of your reunion. And once again, Myra, thank you so much. Jean, thank you. Peter, behind the scenes, sharing video, thank you. Mary Kay and Bart, it was a pleasure to see you all, and we'll see you at the next event. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Myra.
Thank you.